Today we are doing a very requested video, and that is the best neighborhoods to live in Denver. And yes, I have my kitchen utensil. It gives me confidence. It gives me something to wave around as I randomly talk to you guys about where to live in Colorado. If you have just found me, if you just clicked on this video, my name is Genevieve. I am a Colorado native and I love offering advice and tips to people who want to move to Colorado. I also love to give you real world advice that is not just like the airy-fairy like stats that anyone can look up, but like the real stuff that people want to know about what's going on in a particular place. So if you like stuff about Colorado, but if you also just like weird YouTubers that make lots of weird stuff, because this channel, I guarantee you, has a lot of weird fun stuff, but I would love to have you. So if you enjoyed this video, please like the video and subscribe to hang out with me a little bit more. So before I reveal to you guys the top 5 neighborhoods that I believe are the best places to live in Denver, I just want to give you some overarching just sort of facts about Denver, because there's actually a lot of price diversity in Denver, and then also kind of diversity in terms of like different neighborhoods being kind of different, but at the same time, Denver is kind of Denver all over. So if you're watching this video and you are already really familiar with Denver, or if you already live there and you're just watching this to see like where maybe you should move, then totally let me know in the comments below what you think the best neighborhoods are. Let's fight about it. Let's fight about what neighborhoods are best. Let's attack each other's political, moral, personal values, and we'll all just have a really great day. So back to price. The average rent for a 1-bedroom in Denver is about $1,200. I saw some stats saying that it would be like $1,400 for a 1-bedroom apartment, and I don't think so. I think you can find enough good deals that you could on average find one for $1,200, but that's not that cheap. If you're coming from California or New York, that might seem cheap. But for most Americans, Denver and Colorado in general is not a super inexpensive state. The average home in Denver costs about $460,000, but that's just like the median home price, and homes, depending on their bedrooms, depending on the bathrooms, depending on like where they're located, obviously that price can range a lot. So you can find a lot of much more expensive places than $460,000, and then you might be able to find some cheaper places if you're looking at condos, but that's just to give you an overall idea of like average pricing in Denver. But as I go through each of these neighborhoods, I will be telling you which of these are a little bit cheaper and which are a little bit more expensive, and that does affect their rank in my list. Also, because I am the kind of person that I don't really know if I like a place until I see it and like get that intuitive feel for, I have to like physically be there and like feel how it feels to me. I wanted to show you guys each of these places. So I physically drove through each of these neighborhoods and creepily filmed. Not that creepily, I just filmed from my car like a totally cool person. I just really wanted to show you guys what these neighborhoods look like, so it's not just me trying to explain things to you, but that you could actually see them as I give you my own little insights on these places. So with that said, let's jump into number 5 on my list. We're going to start with the lowest on my list and work our way up to number 1. The 5th best neighborhood to live in Denver is the Park Hill neighborhood. And as you can see on this lovely map that I have here, this map broke it down into 3 kind of different neighborhoods, and that kind of makes sense because North Park Hill is very, very different from South Park Hill. So that's just something to keep in mind as you are looking for places in this area. So the Park Hill neighborhood is a really old neighborhood in Denver, and the north part of the neighborhood has a much more industrial vibe to it. It feels almost like a 1950s kind of like blue collar homes there. The homes are much smaller. They're all those cute little brick houses, and it has a much different vibe as you go further south. The houses get bigger. They get like obviously more expensive, but technically it's still all the same neighborhood. It's just that it just changes a lot as you drive from north to south. The reason I put this on the list as number 5 is it is like just a quintessential Denver, old school Denver neighborhood. And it also has really good pricing within the neighborhood, especially if you're obviously looking a little bit more north, there's some cheaper options. But even as you go further south, you can often find pretty good deals on places. I also picked this neighborhood because of its location. It is like just close enough to the Denver Zoo and the awesome museum over there and the park. It's just close enough to all of that that it kind of is a total package in some ways, and that it has like the history, it has fairly good pricing, and then it's also well located. So that is the Park Hill neighborhood. I feel like if you want to be like a Denver local, like this is where you live. Like this is where the Denver locals live, is in Park Hill. Number 4 on my list is my favorite neighborhood, and yet it is not number 1, it is number 4, and that is the Cherry Creek neighborhood. So I put Cherry Creek as number 4 on the list because it is so effing expensive. It is actually listed as the second most expensive neighborhood in all of Denver. But it is so nice. Like, I just love this neighborhood. It obviously has the fabulous mall there, the Cherry Creek Mall, and a lot of great shopping. It also has a little bit of like a Dallas-y vibe. Like, that's kind of the best way I know how to describe it. And that there's definitely some like old school money snobbery there. And I don't know why, it just kind of reminds me a little bit of Dallas. Like if Dallas came to Denver, it would be like in Cherry Creek. Cherry Creek has so many beautiful old mansions, but it also has a lot of new builds, a lot of new apartment buildings. And again, they're not cheap. So to get, I looked it up, and to get a studio apartment right now in one of the nicer buildings around there, you could maybe find one for like $1,300 or $1,400 a month. And that's just for like a tiny studio. So again, it's like not super cheap, but it is so close to just everything awesome that is shopping. It is so beautiful. It's fairly safe. It's obviously a very visited area of Denver just for all of the shopping and stuff. But it's just a really nice, beautiful part of Denver. And the only reason it's not number 1 on this list for me is because it is like one of the most expensive parts of Denver that there is. But if you can afford it, if price is really not an issue for you, I highly, highly recommend that you look for your next home in Cherry Creek. So before I get into my top 3 places, I want to just insert into your brain that these top 3 are actually all pretty much on the same level of awesome for me, but the thing that will make them different for you is your own preferences. So I've ranked the top 3 based on my own preferences, but listen to your own self and your own needs, and the little differences between these will really like inform you, like what is the one for you. So the number 3 neighborhood in Denver is Sloan's Lake. And let me point to the map just a little bit longer so you really see it. So Sloan's Lake is a neighborhood that is located on the very western edge of Denver. So it is west of I-25, and in like old school Denver people or Denver culture, I feel like it was always considered that the real Denver was like east of I-25, and it was kind of like the ghetto that was west of I-25. But that has changed so much in the last 20 years. And now parts of Denver that are west are considered some of the trendiest neighborhoods, like the Highlands, for example, which is not on this list. I think it's so overrated, and I think you need to look out for areas like the Highlands that are overrated, super trendy, and therefore totally overinflated in their pricing. So I have Sloan's Lake on this list for the people who would like to live in a place like the Highlands. I would suggest you go a little bit farther west to Sloan's Lake, just because you might be able to find something a little bit cheaper. It's also super beautiful out there. Obviously, it's called Sloan's Lake because there is a lake out there. And again, beautiful older homes, but also a lot of nicer apartments. And it just has a very young, like 30s millennial vibe to it, although a lot of Denver has that vibe. It's just a really beautiful place, and the only reason that it's number 3 on the list as opposed to number 1 is because it is so far west. So it's great to live in the west of Denver if you plan to ski a lot, if you have business that's closer to Boulder or just, closer west. That's the place to be. But if you need to be downtown, or if your life is really in Denver proper, then it doesn't make quite as much sense to live out west. But still, it's all pretty compact and easy to get around. We have the light rail and all that stuff, so it's not a huge deal. But because it is on the western edge, that's why I put it at number 3. But it's a great place to live, and I highly recommend Sloan's Lake. All right, guys, we've made it to number 2, and number 2 on the list of best places to live in Denver is Wash Park. And if you are new to Denver, you will notice that Wash Park is technically, yes, Washington Park, but nobody calls it that. And if you come into Denver calling Wash Park Washington Park, people will look at you like, oh, you are definitely new here. So it is called Wash Park, again, because the neighborhood surrounds a park that is called Wash Park. And it is also one of the total old school quintessential neighborhoods of Denver. So Park Hill and Wash Park, they are both like old school where the Denver locals live. Also super trendy though. There's a lot of young people who live in Wash Park. Wash Park basically has everything you could possibly be looking for in a home in Denver. It's trendy. It has so many cool restaurants. It also has varied price. It's definitely still on the more expensive range of things. But unlike Cherry Creek, there's at least more hope to find a little bit more variance in pricing. It also has just, the beautiful old homes, but again, mixed with apartment buildings. All of Denver is like that, where there's just a lot of homes kind of intersprinkled with apartments, and it's just a really great neighborhood. It wouldn't be a list about where to live in Denver if it didn't include Wash Park. We have made it to number 1. So number 1 on the list of where to live in Denver is, that was a pause for a drum roll, but it is 5 Points. But calling 5 Points Rhino has recently received a lot of criticism because it's alluding to gentrification, and it wasn't originally called that. And so people in Denver think that the neighborhood needs to keep its original name, which is 5 Points. 5 Points, by the way, used to be like the ghetto. Like it was the place that you would go if you wanted to get drugs and a prostitute and all that. I know I'm selling the neighborhood so well by explaining the history of it right now, but it's important to know because it's important for Denver history. So now the name Rhino is kind of being phased out, although you'll still hear a lot of people refer to it as that. But it's also, this neighborhood has become so wonderful. It is where I suggest that you live if you want to live in the more urban area of Denver, because I absolutely don't recommend that you move to downtown Denver or Lodo right now, because it's just not super safe. It's not great vibes in downtown Denver. So if you are looking for that downtown Denver vibe, but you obviously don't want to live in downtown, then I totally suggest 5 Points. It still has that urban vibe, but it also feels like a really strong community. There's amazing restaurants. There is great art there, and it's much safer. It's not the 5 Points that it was 20 years ago. And also, I know I've said quintessential Denver like 70 times in this video, but it really is this area in particular. And like I said, if your preference is more urban living, then I totally suggest that you look into moving to 5 Points. So those are the top 5 neighborhoods that I would recommend that you move to Denver, at least for 2021. Denver is always very much evolving and changing, and I feel like the neighborhoods, there's always the staple neighborhoods, but there are often trendy neighborhoods that pop up, and but I feel like the list that I just gave you is a pretty solid list of where to live in Denver, especially if you want to really become like ingratiated in the Denver culture and really feel a part of right off the bat. So thank you for watching this video and coming along that janky car ride with me. It was quite the adventure filming and driving through the neighborhood. I actually really loved it. I think maybe people who saw me with my camera thought I was crazy, but I loved just driving around, just filming stuff. So I hope you enjoyed it as well. And as always, please like the video, subscribe, I already told you that, but I will see you in my next video.